Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Estamos acá de regreso a nuestro segmento del día, nuestra entrevista especial con nuestra invitada especial acá en Believe in You por radiolatinoinc.com. Bienvenida Brenda Jimenez de la organización Refuge For Women, ¿correcto?
Sí.
Y tenemos una amiga aquí caribeña, Puerto Rico.
Sí,
Puerto Rico, bienvenida.
Huepa.
Huepa.
Gracias, Cecilia. Encantada de estar con ustedes contigo en esta mañana y saludos a mi gente de Caguas y a todos los puertorriqueños que están escuchando y a todos los demás. Muchísimas gracias por tenerme en esta mañana.
¿Prefieres la entrevista en inglés o en español?
Inglés.
En inglés. Ok, pues English it is.
Thank you.
El tema de hoy es el cyberbullying. ¿Y qué es cyberbullying? Y les voy a dar la definición que encontré pues en el diccionario porque mi interpretación obviamente pues puede ser un poco diferente, pero básicamente el cyberbullying lo definen como ataque digital, que es lo que es. Todas las plataformas digitales que tenemos nosotros, donde tú puedas tener una presencia online, es cibernética o cyber. So cyberbullying is something that is close to my heart. Because I have been experiencing cyberbullying because it's the easiest way to do it nowadays from an ex. And I can't say so much from women, but in a way, I have experienced that through Facebook, let's say, in the form of some, I can say a little bit of harassment, and that was a few years back, and that has to do with some of the groups that exist where women harass other women in groups for petty stuff, which I'll share later. And others simply have to do with the haters because they're very real.
Right.
But I know that other individuals have suffered from bullying in many other ways, shapes, or form. And that includes our children, our youth, unfortunately. So I wanted to talk about this because I got to my climax when it came to that. I said, I've had it. I have to look at what I can do to protect myself and to just kind of like bring peace to my life again. Because what that does is that when you get those messages, it just throws you off. It throws off your balance, it throws off your day, and it gets you off of, como decimos, de nuestras casillas. Although I handle it differently now than I did in the past because I already know that this person, that's a pattern of behavior. And then I've always looked at what is the root of it, what is the cause of it, what makes these individuals have these attacks, take attacks on other people. But when it comes to your line of work, where you are in human trafficking, you're a human trafficking advocate, and domestic abuse advocate, like I have been as well. And cyberbullying, as we know, I don't know when this started, but it is, you told me, the number one method of recruitment nowadays for women and children, or
predators and traffickers are looking. They're scouring the internet. It's an easy form of recruitment for them, and they go hand in hand. I mean, we can look at this issue separately and talk about the statistics. Like 80% of kids nowadays have said that they've been attacked in some way online. And then 40% over a long period of time, according to the Cyberbullying Research Center. So the reach into children, because bullying is so prevalent, is now you can see why it would be so much bigger, because of just the availability, just every platform that's available to them. So For us, we're working against those traffickers, and what they're doing is they're looking for vulnerable people. So people that have, they see online often. You can kind of tell some of those signs just by the way that they're constantly, putting themselves out there. Sometimes they'll have multiple accounts.
Yes.
I'm talking about young people, because they'll want to, show one account to their family, one account to their friends, and one account to other people. So traffickers and predators are keen on that. They're looking. They know that that's usually a sign that these young people are wanting to escape something or hiding something,
Right.
and so they know that those are the kids that are vulnerable. And so they utilize, what they'll do is they'll do the counterattack, which is they're trying to lure them through methods of the exact opposite of what they see. They'll find these kids and they'll say, hey, you're beautiful. They often will ask them, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And of course, they latch on to them right away. And they'll often tell them what their problems are, that they're being attacked, that they're having all of these problems. So they'll give them exactly what they're hoping for, which is a place to escape.
So essentially, they look for the weaknesses.
Right.
And they look for these children that are latchkey kids that are alone a lot because the parents are working.
Right.
Or that live in certain situations at home that are just unbearable for them.
Right.
And that's where definitely the World Wide Web and all the social media platforms have amplified and made their jobs easier. Mm-hmm. So let's go back a little bit. Tell me about how you ended up in this line of work and why.
Well, my experience was over 20 years in vocational education. So I've worked for many years in young adults and adults, those students that weren't the 4.0 kids off to the university. These were the young people that either didn't know what they wanted to do or often took other roads and made a lot of mistakes before they decided to come back around and pursue some type of short-term education. So I saw a lot of cases that would come before me in my office, and I could tell situations that I wish I could go back to, where I saw a young woman perhaps being brought in by an older man and having that older man pay for their education, usually in massage therapy or something like that. And you could see these cases over and over again. And so I saw a great need, and not just with those students in the general population, but especially in those that were in the out of the foster care system. So those that would be receiving like the Chafee grant for education. And many of those cases, they were in a very desperate situation. Oftentimes they were homeless. Oftentimes they lacked resources because now they had graduated out of the system. Mm-hmm. And so they were, in many cases when they were trying to pursue their education, trying to make, a good way for themselves, but often found that when they were done with school, whether it was a medical assisting or some other job, they didn't have enough money to be able to support themselves. So then they started to look at alternatives, whether that was going into the strip clubs or, in this case, again, open to pornography, especially in this area. I would often see that as what they saw as an option for themselves. And every single time they would tell me, because they would come back around and say, you know what, this is just temporary. This is just temporary.
Whoa, okay.
And so I saw this over and over again. So over the years, I was working a lot with Runaways and cases like this, and again, trying to help them to get their education. And then finally I said, I've got to do something more. This isn't enough. So thankfully started researching and found that, the area that I thought really needed to dig down deeper in is to provide alternatives for these young people, places for them to go, because in many cases with human trafficking, they were being rescued and had no alternatives. They had no places to stay. They had, again, once they were through a rehabilitation program, because most of the time they would send them to rehab, they had no place to live. They had nothing. So they, again, thought, I'll do this for a little while. right? And most of the time, though, it was just a gateway.
So if they were rescued or they escaped, you said that after they went through rehab, they would, let's say, go stripping,
Right.
even after the rehab. But isn't that a way to get back into it?
Mm-hmm. And many times it wouldn't even be that. They would, if they came out of prostitution and they were rescued, and again, they were usually put into a short-term program. When that was done, what else were they going to do? Many times a pimp or a trafficker would just pick them up. And again, every single time, either out of desperation, in their minds and their hearts, every time I talk to one of these young people, it's always been the same. I just didn't have anywhere to go.
Right.
I'm going to do this temporarily. I really just need, if I had some place where I can go long term, I would be able to turn this around. But people just don't care about me. They think I'm nothing.
So it's the same thing, the same reason why they even ended up in the system. It's just kind of like it's a perpetual,
Right.
It's a cycle that they just can't seem to get out of it. Because they don't have a place to go. They don't think anyone cares for them or
Right.
cares about them. Now tell me about Refuge for Women, the founder being Karina Rosa, as a pastor in the community of Orange County, a very strong woman.
Yes.
That I greatly admire, that unfortunately she could not be here with us today, and Brenda's here representing. Tell us a little bit about Karina's fire for this project and the why.
Yeah, Refuge for Women SoCal, Karina Rosa, she is the director, the city director, representing Southern California, and someone that I've known over 30 years. So we go back a ways. And someone who's worked many, many years for women in the area of domestic abuse. And she was also someone that a couple of years ago said, you know what, human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, is something that we see over and over again, and something that, maybe I think, it's time to make that transition. Because, again, a lot of times people want to help, but they're either afraid, or maybe
Right.
they don't have the resources, or maybe they're not able to dig in, because this is definitely something that you just can't dip your finger in. You got to kind of jump in all the way.
What was her experience? Like, you just shared what was your experience,
Right.
your why, how you decided that you wanted to do something about it. But what drove Karina, being a pastor, which as a pastor, I mean, people tell you so many things.
Right.
And some of them you even take in your own home, because I have a brother who's a pastor, and I see it, that he has taken women from domestic abuse. They've housed them for a little bit, my sister-in-law and him, because they don't know where else to go.
Right.
It's the same scenario.
It's exactly the same scenario. And I'll tell you that over the years, there have been so many times, because usually we've been tag teaming on this for a long time, because what would happen is she would have a case, domestic abuse, and she would take them immediately into their home, her home. And she would call me to say, Brenda, I have someone, we need to get their resume together, we need to find them a job. So that was me. So she would then have them in their home and start calling, looking for places to be able to place that person, a shelter. But again, there were plenty of places that were overnight shelters, emergency shelters, but we were looking for something long term.
Right.
And time after time again, no, don't have a bed. I can't, this person doesn't qualify. There were so many times that this happened that both of us looked at each other like, what are we going to do? There's nowhere for them to go.
Like the foster system.
Right.
Very similar. Yes.
Right. But for women, and again, God bless all of those organizations that have homes. One of the largest organizations that we usually ended up always having to work with, in my case personally, was the Salvation Army. But even then, it was so limited that we finally looked at each other like, you know what, we can't find a solution. And in her case especially, she decided to go to Kentucky, to Refuge for Women, which is the national location. And And once we found out about the organization and the opportunity for us to open a home in Southern California, we said, you know what, this is really our best solution. We need to open more pathways. So because they have 5 homes across the country, and hopefully will be the next home opening here, we want to create as many opportunities and as many beds possible and continue to be a part of the solution, because part of the solution is awareness and also cutting off from the top, which is demand. So we're going to keep talking about it, as hard as that is, but we want to make sure that there are places for them to go.
So tell us about the goals of Refuge for Women. Like, how many beds are you looking, and what type of programs are you going to be offering?
Yes. Refuge for Women is a 9-month program, and it's in 3 phases. The first phase is restorations, the healing, therapy, being able to just give them that opportunity to feel safe, to be able to feel like most of them don't know what it's like to actually have a home. So to be able to be in a home where you're like, wow, this is my home, is incredible. So that focus on the restorative piece is very, very important. And even though that's phase 1, that's still throughout the whole program, because that doesn't happen just over a 3-month period in a vacuum. So the second phase is where, again, that was supposed to be, and it will be, my area, which is now preparing them for the transition. So getting them career ready. Resume, they have no experience. They have nothing to put on that resume. And so we're, are we looking at a short-term education? Are we looking at job opportunities and with employers that are willing to work with people that have, again, no experience or lack experience? And we've formed great relationships in the community, so we're really looking forward to that. And then the third phase is actually now helping them to transition, because we don't want to say, hey, you got your job today, you're out tomorrow, because that's also impossible. So we want to make sure that they are able in the last phase to now feel what that's like to be at home, get yourself together, go off to work in the morning, and to be able to come home and to now budget and plan and to be able to know what it looks like to actually have a future.
So. And how many women would you be able to house?
Well, it would be up to 6 women at a time, because we've also found through Refuge for Women that having too many women at the same time too in a home sometimes causes other issues. So it's 6 women. And again, sometimes what will happen is if someone here is rescued and can be placed in a home, they might be sent to one of our other homes. So they may be sent to Chicago, or they may go to Kentucky, or Las Vegas, or vice versa. So
let's talk about the age, because you mentioned this several times, is that they may not have training. Is there like an average age where they get rescued or they escaped, and an average age when they get abducted? Is there like a preferred age?
Yes. The preferred age, or the average age of those that are brought into the life of, they call it into the life, or being trafficked, is between 12 and 14 years of age. At this time, there is not an average age of rescue, because the average time spent is 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
But just basically because I wish it would be average age of rescue, but unfortunately it's not necessarily rescue. It's just because sometimes, they're, whether they commit suicide or they're killed or they die for other reasons. That's why there's an average age of time or lifespan within that. But we see that, it's women over the age of 18, and we have women in the program. We even have one woman right now that's 60 years old that had decades of being in the life. So
that's crazy. I think about my daughter, and she's 14, and I see her blooming and, her changing, her personality, her body, and I can understand. It's sick. It's like they say, fresh meat.
Right.
And why the children are so preferred. It's unfortunate, that our society has definitely And as you and I were talking, the whole topic of the show has been not just about the cyberbullying, but about dealing with toxic people and attacks on our life and our persona or our businesses, even our public image. And the more public your image, the more attacks.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the other day, we're in the process of helping my father with writing his book. And he just shared the other day, he said, you didn't know this, but one time I was coming out of the stadium and there was a man that waiting for me. He always has fans that would know where he would park. And he said, I have something for you that this is just going to be great for you. And it was cocaine.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So you face all sorts of tests throughout your life, throughout your career, for individuals that think that they have the answer, but they're the ones that they're lost, unfortunately. And another thing is that you and I both know that this whole thing about human trafficking and sex slavery supports another system, whether it's the financial world or it supports certain industries. Let's say like the apparel industry,
Right.
where there's a lot of slavery, child slavery there, because humans are so hungry for goods. Humans are so hungry for possessions, material possessions, for whether it's the way that I'm going to look, I want to look, to it needs to be cheap. I have to be able to afford it. So all of this creates these other systems. They're like all these sub-economies to be able to support the appetite of the human being. And that's the truth. Pornography is another one. It's an appetite of the human being. Wanting to buy nice things, for $10. It's another, it creates that whole system, that underground system, because if you don't have that, those people will not be able to be in business. So then there's the victims, unfortunately, what we've been talking about all along. These are the victims of that entire system, from us to be able to look good, to be able to even afford the goods that we put on our table. Because when I got into the investigation, when I was in the Hispanic Chambers of Commerce about the water, I was in the Central Valley, the Central California. And I was learning and listening to a farmer there and how he said, look, this is a whole nother thing. He said, well, you guys are there in Southern California and we're here in Central California. Different sets of dynamics. Even though the situation with the water, he said, they have to look at where the large metropolitan areas are. And that's where the priority is. Well, here we're suffering, but what are the consequences of that, of rationing or the prices going up or whatever the case may be? He said, I have to let go of my people.
Right.
Therefore, the labor force suffers. So these are all the repercussions of all of those systems. He said, and then the problem is that when it goes from what they call it, from farm to table, he said, maybe middle class, upper middle class, and rich individuals can afford those fruits and vegetables and grains. But what happens to the low income population? He said that it's not going to be affordable. So we keep pushing eat a healthy diet, but that's not even real when the prices of things keep going up.
Right.
Because they're not going to be able to afford it. So therefore, they're not going to be able to sustain a healthy diet. So it's a chain. It's una cadena, right?
Right.
It's a chain, a domino effect of everything. And, I had some questions. We were going to have, by the way, a detective this morning. And unfortunately, he could not make it. And I explained already, what is cyberbullying, and Brenda explained, and its different forms, that is in their social media, texting. I mean, I've gotten the social media, the texting attacks, and the voicemail attacks. Now, how can we handle these things amicably? Like in my case, well, it's up to me to make a decision whether I want to move forward and press any kind of charge or not. But when you do it, it has repercussions. But if you don't do it, it also has repercussions, your personal ones.
Right.
So you have to prepare yourself if you're not going to go, that route. And what are the best ways to protect ourselves? I shared when I started this, the show, I have a quote of the day. And basically, I gave people like 10 different steps that emotionally intelligent individuals use to be able to deal with toxicity, because that's what this is. The cyberbullying is toxic people. And that's, the best solution for me is to really use those steps. And some of those is don't pay attention. Don't let it get to you. Don't even give them your time. Surround yourself with the right circle of people, because they can end up dragging you into their world. And sometimes they're not even aware that they're toxic.
Right.
That word, it doesn't, like with me in my case, it took me years to be able to identify someone as, wait a minute, that's a bully. That is bullying. Domestic abuse, whatever you want to call it, it's bullying. And but God forbid you say that to the individual, because they blow a gasket.
Right. It usually makes it worse, for sure. And you hit a very important point. Don't engage. My 16-year-old daughter has shared with me a little while back something that also I found extremely valuable. She'll always, my 13 and my 16-year-olds, they're very insightful. And one of the things that they said, you know what, we just handle it. This is how I handle it, Mom. I just leave all those people on red. I just leave them on red. That means that they know that you read it, but nothing happened. There's nothing better than to cut something off by just leaving them on red.
Well, they want to engage.
Right.
They want you to reply to them, and that's the whole thing. It's like you don't want to engage because that's what they're looking for. They're looking to engage because at the end of the day, what they want is your attention. Right. Yeah. They want attention. And they don't just want your attention, the one of the victim or the attacker. They look for attention in many different ways because they behave similarly in other circles as well. But when you get to the bottom of it, it all stems from childhood, unfortunately. And that's the sad part, is that we have to take care of our children. We have to take care of our babies and help others as well that may be struggling with parenting. But parenting is not a solo job. It takes a village to be able to raise, your family. Right.
I think also very importantly is to engage in these conversations. Many parents, as wonderful, I know so many wonderful parents that were shocked when they found out, like if they just took a sample of the texts of their children, because, I shared this with a group of mothers in a women's group. I said, you know what, don't tell them. I really want you to take a transcript of your children's text messages for a month, because I did that a while back and was pleasantly and slightly unpleasantly surprised about a few things, and was able to open a wonderful conversation with my children about it, because even just with things that sometimes you don't realize that you're saying, or maybe do realize, and you need to be reminded gently or not so gently that that's wrong. But out of the 20 women that were in the group, only 7 participated. And out of the 7 that are participated, 6 were absolutely fall out of your chair shocked. One of them was like, okay, it wasn't too bad. 6 would have fallen out of their chairs. So I went back to and shared that information with the group of 20 women. And I asked, out of the other 13, why they didn't do it. All of them said, with the exception of one, they were too busy. And I said, okay, I get that. The one that answered, and I don't want to say that the others didn't answer honestly, because I'm sure that they honestly believe that they were too busy. But the one that honestly answered, or she said, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. And I thought to myself that probably all of us in that group probably felt a little of that. One was honest enough to come forward and say, I was afraid to see. Because she had boys.
And I have a boy. Okay.
But a few of them, the ones that I say that were falling out of their chair, 2 of them was because of the provocative nature of what they saw in the texts, their daughters. And the other ones were shocked at the kind of things that their sons actually said to their friends.
Yes, and that is... let's just bring it back to like the adult world, the conversations that men have about women and women have about men. And when I posted before, we put the announcement, I thought about it and I sat down and I said, what is this? Because here's the numbers that are very real, is that 19% of the individuals, or let's say youth, that have been bullied, they consider suicide.
Right.
It is that bad. It can get that bad. The attacks are so severe, but sometimes it's just not even the severity of the attack, is the individual, because not everybody has the same strength. Or what we talked about with Nicole on the previous segment was self-love and self-worth. So when those 2 things are off, they're not in alignment, there's a weakness there. And when you feel that you're alone and you're not loved, not only do you not love yourself, but you feel that other people, you don't matter to anyone, right there, that's where all of those issues come, with all the shootings in the schools and the suicides and the fights at school and all these other things. Or they actually can turn the other way. They can actually go to the dark side.
Right.
And become, you know what? I'm being nasty, I'm going to be bad, and I'm going to be a bad girl, like the mean girls. Or I'm going to be a mean boy. Because that's one way, either that they feel that they fit in, or that they can, it's their shield.
Right.
The way that they can protect themselves. It's like, I'm going to treat you the way that I get treated. But unfortunately, that's not the way to go either, because now they're going to attack individuals that don't deserve it. But that's because they were attacked. Have you encountered those situations?
Absolutely. In fact, again, when you're looking back at where the problem stems, that's usually how they respond. They'll become that attacker. If they're not being preyed upon and taken advantage of, then usually that's the other alternative. Because there's what's their coping mechanism? How are they going to deal with it? They're not going to tell their parents. Only 1 in 10 kids tell their parents. So the other 9, what's going to happen? Again, either they're preyed upon, or they're going to become the attacker.
So they become the predator, the attacker.
Right.
And like I said, when I was posting, one of the things that I had to sit down and think, what are the words that come out of our mouth, or we hear, or we read? You're not enough. You're good for nothing. If you grow up listening to all these things, you're fat, you're ugly, slut, bitch. I mean, it's ugly. Pendejos. Beaner. Those things have an impact on people, their psyche,
Right.
Their self-esteem. It's very real. And it's used so lightly. But the sad part is that men do refer to women that way quite often, including their own mates. And then they think it's okay to talk about it with you because hay confianza. And it's like, where do you think that you can talk about this person like that?
Right.
And now society has really lost a lot of those values, especially the young millennials. The way that they talk to one another, and I'm going to say it just like it is. Even some of the celebrities, What's up, bitch? I mean, is that okay? Yes, hey ho.
Yeah.
That vocabulary is happening with our children in the schools and within our society. Maybe funny to some, but just think about it, because a lot of them, they're not parents yet.
Right.
Wait till you become a parent and you hear your kid and then you want to like pull out the chancla. Well, think about what you did.
Right. And you talk about that, and again, we now amplify that in the context of our world right now with all these platforms through technology and social media, and it's just snowballing because of that. So the lack of respect in that sense, just on an everyday basis, is incredible. But again, if going back to them becoming the attackers, or becoming, those people, because they're displacing or placing their anger in some way. But nobody is standing up. People will say, stop bullying. But what does that mean? You need to be specific. You need to start having those conversations about how it can start on the lowest level, to the highest level. How do we talk to each other? Wake up and start, addressing it within your own, confine your family. Beyond that, friends, society, the community, schools, wherever that is. We've got to keep it moving, and we've got to address it. But it's amazing to me, again, the fact that the apathy towards it is just incredible. And
well, because a lot of individuals don't think they're bullies. I've had to step up for my children and write a couple of letters to teachers that were bullies. See, bullies come in many forms,
right,
shapes and forms. So that's another way. A lot of these individuals that become these dysfunctional adults, it's because they were bullied by their own teachers. Not just the situation in the neighborhood with the kids or los primos, or the siblings or the parents. The school has a tremendous impact on our children because that's where they spent most of the day,
right,
for 18 years of their lives. So that's another scenario, is that, like you said, being aware of what's going on in the school, talking to the children, having those conversations, because the truth of the matter is that a lot of the serial killers come from these dysfunctional homes and not having love, or the women haters, same thing. It was something with the mother, the relationship with the mother, or what they saw that the father did to the mother. So not to be taken lightly, and why to me this topic is so important, because, in my family, we feed 200 kids a day in Dominican Republic, and we have a 15-acre facility, and we see a lot of this. A lot of those kids that have gone through our facility, some grow up to be normal, good people, but many of them actually end up in jail, dead, trafficking drugs, and who knows what else, bearing arms. And then but we see it, we've seen it, and I can't say enough about it. It's like it takes multiple shows to address this, but I don't want to forget about some of the other things that I wanted to touch with you before our time is up. Is, have you seen a jump from a digital space to stalking? It happens to celebrities.
Right.
It jumps from being attacked, verbally attacking them wherever they can digitally, right, to now stalking them for real, showing up at their homes. That's the other thing that I want people to think about, and don't take it lightly either, that it's just cyberbullying, because it can if someone is obsessed with you, it can jump from one to the other. And then you do have to be concerned for your own physical safety and that of your family.
Right. Cyber stalking, if we want to label it that or call it that, again, the ease of it increases because of these social media platforms. Even just looking, Facebook is a great example. I'll use two examples, Facebook and Snapchat. Facebook, I took a look, especially, again, speaking to multiple groups, and I'd asked, when kids went back to school, how many people had posted, my daughter's starting 5th grade at Orville Elementary School, And again, they think they think that only their friends and family see that, so it's absolutely safe. But you don't know, even within that scope of friends and family, anything that might be happening. But that's just with children. With adults, they always post exactly where they are, what they're doing, where they're going, even within the next week. And again, that's just on Facebook. Snapchat, people are shocked when they realize, I asked them, are you ghost? Do you ghost yourself? What is that? Now, do you realize that if you're not in ghost mode, that they can tell if you're in a car driving on Wilshire Boulevard exactly where you are at any given time? I mean, the ease of being able to stalk someone these days is incredible.
Yes, I mean, I don't use Snapchat, but my daughter occasionally does, and I've learned a thing or two with her, and I've told her, it's like, no, dangerous. And so many people that check in, go on vacation, they know exactly. It's like, if there is an opportunity to go to you or to go to your home,
right,
and vandalize your home. So yes, and one other thing is, I asked what was the reporting process, or more like social media share with me. They're like, have you reported this person to Facebook? And I'm like, you know what, I never thought about it. But again, it goes back to, do you want to harm someone else's reputation, and you making that decision is how far is too far. Only we know how far is too far.
Right. I think that reporting, if there are issues, report it, for goodness sake. If anyone walks away from our show today, if with anything else, is just report it. Tell someone. I think that, again, that we go back to almost every case of or any issue, an abuse, in trafficking, in bullying. Report it. Talk to someone, and don't talk to just one person. You need to report it to multiple sources. Because again, very, very important to get it out there. You're not alone. There is help. Again, that's something that is so important. So, yes, if there's anything that you see that most people will just hide posts or anything.
Right.
They usually or unfollow someone, but that's not enough.
No, that's what I've learned. It's not enough, because they find ways, but definitely, reporting it, like you said, it's an option.